Hi everybody, it's Jen. Welcome back to my channel, Hallmark Plus More, where we watch and talk about shows, movies, mysteries, Hallmark ornaments, and anything else that floats our boat. So today I'm going to be reviewing and discussing a Hallmark Channel original series, The Way Home, Season 3, Episode 9. So before I get into that, I just want to say thank you to everybody who subscribes to my channel, likes my videos, leaves me comments. I appreciate you so much. I read all my comments, so if you have any questions or comments about my discussion, my opinions or the episode itself, or just want to spin theories, you can definitely leave them below. It's so much fun listening and hearing from everybody. So also stay with me till the end of the video, because in this video, I also have some notes here on what questions and theories were answered during this episode, and I have them for each time period. So it definitely looks like, we've got some answers. So I have all that I wanted to go over. Also, what and who did we not see at all during this episode, and what that could mean, and then what questions and theories still need to be answered, because there's still some things that are left unsaid, right? And then some possible options for what the episode 10 cliffhanger could be. So definitely stay with me until the end of the video so that we can kind of go over that and discuss. And I'd love to hear from you. Like I said, if you have any comments, definitely leave them below. So starting out this episode, they started out with some flashbacks, and it was with each time period. So a flashback of Colton and Alice singing, which I cannot get enough of. I mean, they have amazing talent and voices. So I love that. I loved watching them record. We also saw Alice telling Eve to move on from Colton from the 70s with them singing. They saw, they showed a scene of Kat and Thomas in 1816. Also, Kat and the townspeople when they were burning down the Landry house. And then Colton saving Jacob from the house. And then in 2025, we saw a flashback of Lewis, hiring Jacob for the vineyard. So the flashback definitely, showed a lot of what's yet to come. So one thing I will say about this episode was we did get a lot of questions and theories kind of confirmed and answered. So I'm really happy about that. That's one thing that has frustrated me in past episodes. I've loved all the episodes, don't get me wrong, but sometimes the episodes won't really give us any answers. So I am happy the way they kind of wrapped up certain storylines and kind of showed us the full dialogue, right? Because in the past you would see one scene and then you would think, well, what happened next, or what happened before they even got there? And they kind of brought us full circle, showing us from beginning to end what really happened. So I really enjoyed this episode. I think there was a lot going on as usual, but I did enjoy being able to get some things answered, and then also see some things that we haven't seen in a while. We saw the clock that, we talk about all the time that we never see. So, I mean, definitely a lot to talk about with this episode. So I'm going to go by time period, because I find that helped me a little better in my last video. So I'm kind of just going to go through each time period with what happened, because of the way it jumps around so much with the episodes. It's really hard to kind of say, okay, well, it went from 1816 to 1974 to 2025, and it's hard to keep up. So I find the videos are easier to watch and understand when everything is all kind of in one time period. That being said, 2025 is going to jump around a little bit since I do that, but I do start with 1816, because that's usually the exciting part. Seems like a lot going on with Kat and Thomas, and her being the witch and the burning of the house. And then I'm going to go to 1974, because we did find some things there, and then I'll end with 2025. And like I say, definitely stay with me till the end of the video because I really want to kind of go over and summarize basically what theories have finally been put to rest and kind of had answers for. A couple of them that I really wanted to know were revolving around Dell. So, but let's get into it. It even starts as the first scene in the show was 1816. So I feel like I'm starting at a good place. So it kind of picks up right where it left off in the last episode with the burning house, right? It's done. It's the next morning, it looks like, or early, dawn, and you see Kat and Jacob just kind of sitting there looking at the burned house and what they're gonna do, right? I mean, Jacob has this new job with Lewis at the vineyard, so I'm like, I don't know if he wants to jeopardize that. Obviously, he's a little traumatized and emotional. Um, but I was thinking he'll probably stay with Elijah. But no, he like got up and said, "No, I got to go to the vineyard." So Kat decides to stay and help Thomas rebuild, not really knowing what's going on. So, and knowing that Kat is a journalist and, award-winning journalist, and she's supposed to be great at research, it always kind of boggles my mind how Kat doesn't know what's going to happen next. If I were Kat, every time I was in 2025, I'd be researching, everything that happened, but it's a show, so I guess that's why she's supposed to be surprised too. But she's kind of, not really knowing what to do. She wants to stay and help rebuild. And of course, Thomas and Susanna are there as well. So, Kat and Susanna kind of have that talk. And Susanna basically tells her, I don't know what's going to happen. Cyrus is still unconscious. I don't know what my future is going to hold. And Kat, being of modern times, she's like, just get him to change his will. And I think Susanna was like, it's not possible, but it's nice that you think that's possible. And I think Susanna like nicely says, hey, let's come back down to where you are in the 1800s. That's not possible. So I love Susanna and Kat's conversations. I really enjoy Susanna. I think she's an amazing actress, and I just love that character. That in that time period, you had that strong, confident woman. And I loved her so much. This is probably my favorite Susanna episode. For her standing up and being confident, but she is so vulnerable with Kat. Like, I really don't know what's going to happen if Kat doesn't or I'm sorry, if Cyrus doesn't recover. His sons will come back and I'll be cast out. So I think Kat is realizing, like, okay, I know things are different here, but I didn't realize that you were really left with no options. So, and then the doctor tells Susanna what's going on with Cyrus. And he's very sick. You can see he's bandaged up, he's burned. So he basically, the doctor was very frank with Susanna and said, listen, the beams fell on him. He's unable to walk. Smoke filled in his lungs. He's unable to speak. He'll probably never walk or speak again. His skin is burned, but that will heal. And of course, with Susanna, it'll probably heal even faster. But basically, he's not going to be able to walk and talk again. He's not going to be that strong, powerful man that he used to be. So the doctor is telling Susanna everything, frankly. And Cyrus is just lying there, like bandaged up, sees Kat in the doorway and kind of grasps for air because I think he recognizes her, but he can't speak. So, I mean, I think Susanna thinking quickly. I mean, I just love what she says. I actually quote her because I just wanted to rewind it and watch it again because I'm just like, wow, Susanna, you go, girl. In the moment, you knew what to say and you stood up for yourself. And like I say, I love Susanna scenes. So she actually tells Cyrus, like, I know you want to live, but you need my help. And I need your protection. So she's basically telling him, like, I will help you, heal because I need your protection. And you can tell Cyrus is listening to her. He's staring right at her. And this is a quote that Susanna says. I know you love me and you risk your life for mine. but you are the reason my life and the Landry's lives were ever in danger, and justice must be served. So I love that. She acknowledges everything. I know you love me. I know you risked your life going into a burning building to save me. I recognize that. But you didn't have to do that if you didn't put my life in danger in the first place. So there has to be justice for that. And you're kind of living the justice right now. You can't walk or talk and you're burned. But she acknowledges that. You know, most people wouldn't say that. They say, oh, you sacrificed yourself for me. Well, you shouldn't have had to have sacrificed yourself. You're burned because you're the one who brought the townspeople there. So I love that. I know you love me and you risked your life for mine, but you are the reason my life and the Landry's lives were ever in danger, and justice must be served, quote unquote. So, and then she says, I will be your voice and I will run Port Haven as I see fit. And Cyrus kind of nods. I mean, obviously he can't talk, but he acknowledges, like, okay, yes. So Susanna, in that moment, you know, we just saw her being vulnerable with Kat, like, I'm defenseless. I don't know what's going to happen. If my husband dies, his sons will come back. They'll cast me out. You know, if he doesn't die and he survives, yes, I'll be protection, but I'm always going to be living as his possession. You know, I'm always going to be here under the possession of Cyrus and, you know, whatever he does in the town. So, and then she, you know, all of a sudden gets it together and finds that opportunity. You know, I will keep your secret. Only the doctor and me know how bad your condition is. I will keep your secret because I need your protection. But I will be your voice. I will run Port Haven as I see fit. And I just makes me love Susanna even more. Like I said, I just love everything she stands for. She's one of my favorite characters in any show in any time period because she's just amazing. So I absolutely loved that. So like I said, my favorite Susanna scene because she just shows how you can be vulnerable and not know what's going to happen, and then a few minutes later, she's able to find her voice and yet speak her mind respectfully. You know, she didn't yell at her. I feel like in 2025, in our modern times, we yell at people and blame people and, you know, get violent and physical. And I feel like she was so professional and respectful and just a great person. You know, she could have screamed at Cyrus and, you know, but she didn't. She just said, look, I know you love me and I understand you risked your life for me, but you're the reason my life needed to be saved, basically. And I didn't forget that. And, you know, this is what's going to happen from now on. And it's just, I just love that. She's fearless. Just such an amazing role model. She could have done so many different things. She could have completely gone in a different direction. And the way she just kind of told Cyrus, you know, like I said, a very respectful, you know, confident woman, and said it exactly how it needed to be said. So like I said, that was amazing. You'll see a little bit more of Susanna in the episode. And then you have Kat with Thomas. So I always, when we see Kat and Thomas scenes, I always want more because I feel like there's always, I always feel like Thomas never says what he wants to say, right? Or he does, but he says like 5 or 6 words and then Kat shuts him down or she runs away. Like in the scene when they were in jail, I was like, Kat, shut up and let Thomas tell you what he wants to tell you. So I kind of felt this way too. I'm glad they had that conversation, but I still feel like Thomas could have said more or had a goodbye kiss. I don't know, maybe Kat would have pushed him away, but I feel like that was longing. I feel like when you say goodbye to somebody, or you're in a situation where you know it's never going to work out, you have that embrace, even if they don't have a goodbye kiss. I was a little sad that, you know, Thomas didn't embrace Kat, and Kat didn't like give him, a hug. And I kind of wished it ended that way. I understand if they didn't want to do the kiss, but they should have at least embraced and had that one last, touch. That being said, I think it was very mature of Kat. I really liked the conversation they had. Um, she confirmed the pond rules. Now, if you see my previous video, I left hope saying, yes, Thomas jumped in the pond and didn't go anywhere, but maybe if he was holding hands with the Landry, he would be able to go somewhere. We just don't know, because at that point, we don't know. But apparently, and don't quote me on this because I didn't see the video, but I heard the writers made statements that, you definitely cannot travel forward. I never saw the video. That's just what I've heard. So don't take that as, don't quote me on that. But it looks like Kat reiterated that as well. So she's like, yeah. And, Thomas confesses to her, I tried to jump after you one time and I didn't go anywhere. And Kat says, you never will. The pond won't let you jump forward in time, quote unquote. So Kat kind of reaffirms to Thomas, like, I don't want you to continue to try because it's never going to happen. You're never going to be able to jump forward. It'll only take you backwards. So I guess that kind of confirms that Thomas isn't going to be able to time travel in the future. So I feel like this was kind of closure for that relationship. I just wish there was an embrace. I guess that's just me. I'm a big hugger. I hug my family. I just, that's kind of how you end conversations. When my family visits, we hug, and when it's time to leave, we hug. But we also have children. And I feel like, when you have children, you're like, oh, give them a hug, goodbye. So maybe that's why I'm more like that, because we have children in my family. I don't know. But I was kind of hoping for at least an embrace. But I did love the closure. So that's me nitpicking. I really enjoyed the conversation because, Kat said the quote, people come in your life for a reason, a season, or a lifetime. And I like the way she corrected Thomas. No, it wasn't a season. It was a reason. So even though Kat and Elliot have had this rocky relationship and they've kind of tried to grow and they need to mature, which I think they kind of need to do on their own, which I think she's kind of done through Thomas. But she needed to be in a relationship to find out what she really needed in a real relationship. Not that her relationship with Thomas wasn't real, but it wasn't going anywhere. She knew it couldn't go anywhere. But it's kind of like when you see people. You ever heard of people who like get remarried to the same person, or you date somebody in high school and then you meet them after college in their 20s and 30s and you're like, wow, you've really changed and grown since the last time I've seen you. So I feel like for Kat and Elliot, they need to grow. They need to mature. They need to find themselves and then come back together with the maturity. Right? So I love that's what Kat said. Like, I learned from you. You taught me, and I quoted this. She said, I know what I want from love, unwavering support, passion, wants to be challenged by someone who loves me for exactly who I am. So those are the things that she told Thomas that, thanks to him, she's learned what she needs out of a relationship. So, to me, that tells me she's going to talk to Elliot and finally have a sit down with Elliot and be like, look, this is what I need out of the relationship. And I'm sure you've probably heard the term love languages. Everybody wants something different out of a relationship. Everybody's different, right? We're from different cultures. We're from different nationalities. We like different things. We have different hobbies. You have to learn how somebody is and how they like to be loved. Not necessarily loved, but, you have to work with that person. Every marriage, every relationship is different. So I think she learned so much of what she wants out of her relationship. She even said to Dell in a couple episodes back, like, I felt like at one point Brady and I were roommates. I don't want that to happen with Elliot. Like, what can I do so that doesn't happen? I know everybody likes to blame Elliot, but Kat's not perfect either. I'm not blaming Kat. I'm not blaming Elliot. I'm just saying I think we need to make sure it's not one-sided. People really hate on Elliot, but they need to realize it takes two to make a relationship, and Kat hasn't been the best partner either. They both have had problems. Elliot has had problems. Kat has had problems. So I feel like if you're gonna bash Elliot, you need to tell Kat you need to make sure Kat takes some of that responsibility. It's not one-sided. So I'm hoping now that Kat has kind of closed the book on Thomas, she can focus on Elliot. But she needed to learn what she needed out of a relationship from Thomas. So I agree. He was there for a learning lesson. And hopefully she can take that and move on with Elliot. If not, maybe she'll move on and be, single at the end of the series whenever it ends next episode, next season or season 5. Maybe that's what we find out, that she's not supposed to be with Elliot. But in any relationship, you grow. You ask people, you've been married 50 years. Why are you still married after 50 years? What's the secret? They're like, if you're not growing together, you're growing apart. Like, you have to work on it and make sure as you grow as a person, you're growing with that, as a couple. So I definitely think it was bittersweet. It was so sad for Thomas to realize we're never going to be together. And he even said, so Elliot's your forever, your lifetime. And then Kat kind of says, well, nobody can predict the future. But Thomas kind of realized that. We also found out something about Thomas. That Thomas has family in New York. So I think in previous episodes, he had mentioned he was going to go to the States, but we thought he created the family in New York. Now we find out there's family already there. So he's just going to join them. So he's not going to be alone. He's going to join family and then, hopefully get married and have a happy life of his own. So as bittersweet as that was, I think Hallmark did it very well. I was very pleased on how they had closure for the Kat and Thomas relationship. I think that conversation was great. I think they both got out what they needed to say. Like I say, just kind of nitpicking, I would have liked a hug, if not like a goodbye kiss, even though that was probably, a little inappropriate if they had a kiss, but I just wanted some kind of connection to kind of say goodbye with. And then Kat says to him, fare thee will, my Thomas. And then when Thomas says, I like the sound of that, my Thomas, I feel like that's kind of the last thing he says. So I'm like, oh, that's when you guys hug. But anyways, that's just my take, my 2 cents. Like I say, judge-free zone, but yeah, I mean, I think it was one of those bittersweet moments. And then he leaves, says there's, a ship bound to New York. Kat is helping Elijah carry out the burnt wood, and he's kind of limping because, Elijah was hurt in the fire as well. So, and he went in and pulled Cyrus out. So, I mean, he went into a burning building, a burning house too. So he's like, I don't think I can make this work. And so Kat's like trying to say, I know it works out. Like, you gotta stick with it. I know we can fix this. I don't know how, but I know. And then Elijah's like, well, maybe in your time, So Kat is kind of losing it, Jacob went back. She split things, she kind of closed the book on the Thomas relationship. She's feeling very emotional and alone. So she's kind of crying on a log, and then she looks up and she sees Elliot. And she runs to Elliot. And they have this like passionate kiss. And she just looked happy to see Elliot. And I think Elliot needed to go when he found out she was doing it alone, or I guess not alone, but without Jacob, knowing that she was doing it, with Thomas and Susanna. Like, Elliot, I think, realized in that moment, like, Kat went back and risked her life for her ancestors, right? And now she's trying to rebuild. I think that was kind of Elliot's like, okay, this is my big moment. I want to go back. I want to show Kat that, I can be strong for her and I can be there for her and I can help Elijah rebuild too, right? I mean, he can be that strong man that Elijah needs to help since Jacob wasn't there because Jacob basically you know, took him to the pond and jumped. Even though we don't see that, I think he realizes he needs to be with Kat. And, Jacob takes him to the pond, says he couldn't stay, and goes back. For to see Lewis, but so I like that moment, and then when he meets Elijah, I just think it was such a moment for him. It's almost like the same feeling I feel like he got when he got his 5 minutes with the adult Colton. Like he's listening to Kat, kind of taking it for granted of her jumping in the pond. I mean, listening to her because he's recording everything, but not really getting it until Alice goes, let's do it together and you can have your 5 minutes with Colton. And I feel like he kind of realized it then. And I feel like he forgot what that felt like, in my opinion. I feel like, okay, you're starting to take the pond trips a little for granted when Kat tells you she's gone. You need to experience it again to realize like it's real. It's really happening. So I'm glad he went back because first, Kat needed somebody. She's alone crying and she needed comfort. And I'm glad Elliot was that person. And I feel like it became real to him and he really wanted to help. The Landrys have been so good to him. I feel like this is his way of giving back too. And then I loved the little gentleman gesture, right? So Kat goes in the house and Elliot's outside and he sees Thomas in the woods. Thomas sees Elliot. It's like they both know about each other, but they've never seen each other. So it was just kind of like that nod. Now, I'm not a guy. I don't do the nod, but I know it's kind of an acknowledgement of, okay, I'm here to protect her now. And Thomas is like, yeah, okay, I know my time's done. So I feel like it's kind of a respect thing. We both want to care for Kat. You were here when I couldn't be. I'm here now. This is your time to leave. And Kat basically told him that earlier. So I loved that. No words were spoken. It was just a mutual respect, head nod. And I loved that. And then the moment Susanna comes, she comes up in a beautiful black horse, comes to the farm. She's got, Cyrus's men with them with building supplies. And she says, my husband, my beloved husband is recovering. But his first concern was for the Landry family. And, we come here with building supplies from Cyrus's shipyards and we're going to rebuild your home. And I just love that because Elijah's like, this is a miracle, right? And Elliot, I can't take my eyes off of Elliot when he sees Susanna. It is just like out of body experience. I mean, I just love that. I think that's another thing coming full circle for Elliot, right? I kind of said in one of my comments from one of the last episodes, the Landrys and the Augustines are so close, right? We saw it in 1816, Jacob with Susanna. They were going to get married. Susanna was close with Elijah before that, right? So, I mean, they have always been close. Susanna even said at one point, when they were going to burn down the house, she's like, my marriage wasn't just to protect me, but to protect my family, the Landrys. So she even said, like, I had an agreement with Cyrus to protect my second family. So her chosen family, the Landrys. And then, of course, adult Colton took Elliot under his wing. So even in, 1999, Landrys and Augustines were really close. So my question is, why does Vic hate the Landrys? And I know everybody's going to say, well, because he blames Colton for Rick's death. But it's deeper than that, okay? I understand that. I've seen all the episodes. I know that. But it's deeper. Vic has a strong hatred for the Landrys. He keeps using the words, the Landrys use the Augustines. So what does that mean? Because that's not blaming him for Rick's death. That has nothing to do with using another person. So there's still something inside Vic's heart that has this strong hatred for the Landrys that I feel like we still haven't unsurfaced. So, I mean, they were really close in the 1800s, all through 99. I think it was just Vic. I don't know how Vic's parents cared about the Landrys because we don't hear that story. But there is something going on that happened with Vic personally that he used the word that the Landrys use the Augustines. So I still feel like there is something that we don't know yet because as we can see again with Susanna and Elijah, they had a love for each other. And even in 2025, when Lewis is talking to Jacob, he even says, this is great. Two founding families working together, just like they did in the old days. So, I mean, I guess I just want to find out why Vic is the way he is, because something had to have happened besides Rick's death blaming Colton. I know that's really a lot to take in, but I feel there's something else. To use the word, they use us. I don't want Kat to have the Augustine ring because she doesn't deserve it. And, so I mean, that's just my opinion. But going back to the 1800s when Elliot sees Susanna, it's just so amazing. It's like he's seeing a ghost. So I loved that interaction. I loved the way Susanna was, very proper, meeting Elliot and said, you always have a friend and, family. And I think that was great for Susanna to actually meet a future Augustine as well, knowing Kat is with an Augustine and her affection towards Kat in the 1800s. So again, kind of like a full circle that I mentioned earlier. I love that. And then you also have something else that you found out. Susanna admits that she is going to write the book. So she does admit that to Kat. And she basically tells him, I wrote a chapter on Cyrus, but I'm going to remove it because now that I speak for Cyrus, I'm going to do so much good in the town. I don't want that tainted chapter to kind of erase or, tarnish what I'm doing in Port Haven because I'm doing it under Cyrus's name. So we definitely find out a question, why was the chapter removed? Well, this was why the chapter was moved. She did it herself. And I think Kat kind of has that aha moment like, oh, you removed the chapter. Like, I think she was like an oh crap. I call it an oh crap moment. Like, oh crap, I published that because I thought somebody was coercing you and really you took it out yourself. So, but that is another answer we find out, right? And Elliot is in such shock seeing Susanna, but I really do think it was such a great moment. And Elliot saying like meeting you is a gift. It was just a sweet interaction between Susanna and Elliot. So there was a lot of good that I really liked that went on in 1814. And like I said, some bittersweet with Kat and Thomas. But I think the writers did it in such a nice, sweet way that I think it was great closure. I think it was great closure for Kat, Thomas, and Elliot. The little head nod they had going back and forth at the end. Like, I respect you. I appreciate you. Thank you for taking care of her. I got it from here. You know what I mean? Kind of nod. At least that's the way I took it. And of course, this is just my opinion, judge-free zone. To each his own. I'm sure everybody interprets things differently, but I thought it was a great, scene that they put in. So going to 1974 now, there's a lot of fun stuff. You saw the flashback of Colton and Alice singing, which if you see my videos, I love their singing. They are so talented. Alice is so angelic. I mean, she's an amazing singer. She needs to do Broadway. She's an amazing actress. She's one of my favorites, if not my favorite actor on the whole show. And so that she can sing so great, singing opera in real life, she needs to go be a hit on Broadway. I'd go see her. Or put out a record. I'd buy it. Put out a soundtrack to this show, please. I love all the music. But anyways, so it looks like, we get something else answered, like what happened with the record that they recorded, right? Because Jasper sent it to somebody he knew in San Francisco, and it turns out he loved it. He loved the demo, and he wants them to record it in person. So Evie is like planning a big epic road trip to San Francisco, and so Alice comes back and sees that. And wants Alice to come, saying, I'm going to be Colton's groupie. We're going to get an apartment and it's just going to be great. Just the three of us. And Alice is like, whoa, we're in the middle of senior year. Like, what are you going to do about school? And Evie's kind of like, dreams are the thing. You can't follow them if you are standing still. Sorry, I looked at my notes because that was a direct quote from Evie. Dreams are the thing. You can't follow them if you are standing still. So, Evie, being the loving, free spirit she is, she wants to travel, right? Remember, she was going to go to Morocco for the summer when Rick died and Dell came and she decided not to go. So I'm not surprised, that she's wanting to do that. And then, Alice sees Colton at the pond after he just tried to jump. She actually watches him jump and he doesn't go anywhere. So he's frustrated and wet. And Alice actually talks to him, what are you doing in the pond? We're friends. We should keep secrets. If we're friends, we can do that. So Alice, being the sweet, loving person she is, she actually got Colton to confess that he is a time traveler and this is what he did. So we get that answer as well. We actually find out as of 1974, he's only time traveled twice. Again, he's a teenager. He's only traveled twice up to being 18. We still know that as an adult, he has traveled before. But at this stage in 1974, we have a confirmation that he traveled in 1814, which we saw. Plant the potatoes and why, and then we saw him in 1816 grab Jacob out of the house during the mob scene in 1816. So we get confirmation from that. How many times has Colton time traveled? Well, as a teen, twice, because he told Alice. So I love that. We only got to see Grandma Fern in one scene, but we found out another answer what the rule breaker was. So Colton was very open to Alice. And Colton even told Alice, when I came back from 1814, I was proud, I was happy, I helped my ancestors, I told my Grandma Fern. She got angry and she said, you can't tell people their future. And then she said, quote, you broke the rules. So we found out why Fern thinks that Colton is a rule breaker. So now we find out something else about the pond. You cannot tell people their future. So Colton is like, I broke the rules. That's why I can't time travel. He's like, the pond won't let me travel anymore because I broke the rules. So that's what Colton thinks. So he's telling Alice, as of now, I'm not going to time travel anymore. And he explains everything. So how I was telling you earlier, it comes full circle, sorry. We know when, there was speculation when he got out of the pond. Was it 1814? Was it 1816? Now we know the day of Rick's funeral was 1816 when he pulled Jacob out of the house. So he said the pond won't let him travel since he broke the rules, but he also told Alice, I'm scared to do it again. So he even goes into the books and Evie. I love that. Colton just flat out told Alice everything. And when Alice says to Colton, but she didn't get the books with the invisible ink, she never read them. Colton kind of had that look on his face like, how in the heck do you know that? That's all true, but how do you know that? So he said, yeah, Dell happened on the same night. So this is a lot. he jumps into the pond, goes back to 1814, meets his ancestors, tells them about potatoes and rye, is all happy, runs home to tell his grandma he did this great thing. She yells at him, but he doesn't let that bother him, right? So he makes the messages in the book, and yes, you do see him making the messages in the two books. And then that night, he gives the books to Evie. So he's still on a high note, right? Fern yelling at him didn't matter. He still made the messages, was going to give them to Evie so she could read them in Morocco and come back home to to Colton. So that he had a great plan. He had a great day. He said it was one of the best days of his life, right? He, saw his ancestors, wrote the message to Evie, and then went to the party and he met Dell, right? So great day. Then Rick dies the same day. So, I mean, that changed everything. So we kind of understand, well, why did he write the message to Evie wanting to be with Evie when he was with Dell? Well, that was because he wrote it the day he met Dell. So now he's glad Evie didn't read the messages because everything changed. Now he wants to be with Dell. So I mean, it was definitely come full circle. Everything was confirmed. We know when he went to 1814. We know when he came back from 1816. He even said it was all his fault. He was able to save someone from the fire, but it was still all my fault. I destroyed my entire family's future, quote unquote. So, I mean, he was feeling bad about it, and he told Alice. And then he said, well, why did you jump today? And Colton wanted to jump one more time because he was planning on going to San Francisco with Evie. And, he just wanted to go one more time. And that's when he told Alice, I guess the pond won't let me go because I broke the rules. And then he said, I think you're like me. I think you're a time traveler. Are you? And Alice says no. And later you hear her explain why to Dell in 2025. Like, I said I wasn't because I remembered when he saw me in 99, he didn't know who I was. He thought I was just, Kat's friend. So I didn't want to say I was a time traveler because, I didn't want him to remember me. But I mean, I think he did anyways. I knew that even before season 3. In season 1, I'm like, yeah, adult Colton knows that Alice is a time traveler. But even still, she doesn't think that. So she says no. And then she comes back again. She runs home, tells Dell, this is, when Colton time traveled and blah, 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 and told all that to Dell. Dell still felt a little betrayed, but once Alice said it was all before, he really got together with you. It was the day he met you. And then, after you left, after Rick's funeral. So, it was definitely interesting because Alice actually returns, and after Colton tells her this whole story about all the time traveling, he sees Dell at his house, runs up to Dell, proposes on the spot, and Alice sees it all, and then she leaves, right? She doesn't see what happens next. The good thing is she goes back to 2025, but then Dell plays music of Colton singing, and then she has the flashback of that exact scene. So again, we're coming full circle. You're like, oh, he proposes, but we don't hear what they're saying together. Why Dell come back? What happened to her family? But we do, because Dell has that flashback. So I love this. This is what I've been wanting to know. What was Dell's secret? I guessed or assumed it was, financial problems based off some of the conversations Dell had in the earlier seasons. And it seems that was part of it. She says her family back in North Carolina had bad financial issues. They lost everything. She came back on her birthday and her parents were quiet. That'd be hard for anybody, to come home expecting a nice warm welcome and they're just like cold as ice. So apparently her parents losing everything, money, possessions, material things. They were devastated. Their life was all about those things, all about money. Nothing mattered. They even sold my horse Lightning without even letting me say goodbye. And not even telling her. So that was hurtful. And as she's remembering that when it goes back to 2025 Dell, she still seems saddened by it. And remember, we saw her say that to Sam or somebody else in one of the earlier seasons about losing her horse Lightning. So it was still personal to her, but her parents didn't care. So she's basically like running back to Colton, like, I didn't matter to them. I couldn't stay there anymore. And then they're gonna get married. Fern is okay with it, but Colton's mom was like, no, you can't stay here. You have to get married first. So Dell doesn't have a place to live. Then Evie knocks on the door and basically says, you're not going to San Francisco. You're gonna stay here with Dell. And Evie was a little annoyed by that, and I can understand why, because before Dell showed up, he was going to go. They were planning out a map and a road trip. Now all of a sudden Dell's back. Now all of a sudden they're engaged, and now all of a sudden he doesn't want to go to San Francisco. So even though Evie is still in love with Colton, she's kind of annoyed, thinking that like Dell's the reason he's not fulfilling his dreams. So he's annoyed with Colton, but she's also annoyed with Dell too. So, Alice is with Evie, and Evie's basically telling her they're engaged, everything's off, I'm alone, nothing left to dream about. So Alice encourages her, like, look, I am here for you. I'm always on your side. You need to travel, meet new people. She hugs her, you need to experience the world. So, and I apologize, I jump around a little bit. That was before the conversation in the kitchen. So now Evie comes to the house. And basically says, look, I hear you're looking for a place to live. I talked to my parents. You know what I mean? I talked to my parents, and you can stay at Lingermore as long as you need, or as long as you want. My parents are okay with it. Evie's not going to be there, though. She's going to travel. She's going to see the world, chase her dreams. Tells Cole he needs to chase his dreams. And then she looks right at Dell and says, don't let anyone stop you. And she kind of stares down Dell, and then she says, I guess you owe me one, Delilah. So that's a quote. And I feel like we kind of got that answer on why Dell feels like she owes Evelyn, because she just says, I guess you owe me one. So I think the owe me one is a couple things. One, I talked to my parents, and now you have a place to stay before you marry Colton. And two, like, you got Colton, he's not going on a road trip with me. He's not fulfilling his dreams. You won, you got Colton. You owe me. I'm not fighting for him. I'm not like fighting you on this, right? I'm just letting you have him, even though Colton was totally in love with Dell. But I feel like still that's Evie saying, like, I'm done. I'm going to leave. You're welcome to stay at my parents' house, but I'm not going to be there to watch this kind of thing. And she leaves. She travels the world. She's going to chase her dreams. But I think it was just too hard for her to stay in the town and see them together. So I think that answers some questions too, because I feel like that's why Evie leaves. There's a little bit going on in 2025, so I'm just going to go over a couple things that happened there, and then I really want to get into what questions and theories were answered, what questions and theories still need to be answered, who didn't we see or what didn't we see, and then, of course, what options would be for the finale, because I think there is a couple options that we could see. So basically, I kind of went over some of the stuff in 2025. Jacob tells everybody about the fire and how Teen Colton saved him. And then that's when Alice kind of realized that must have been when he time traveled. And then, of course, we find out in 1974, Colton tells Alice everything. So we really do get to find out. And Alice has a moment with Dell, and Dell actually tells her to go back. I'm not going to be stepping on your memories. No, I need answers. So I like that, she's going back and telling Dell what she found out. And Jacob and Lewis talk about what he's going to do with the vineyard. And, I'm still suspicious of Lewis. There's quite a few people I'm still suspicious of. However, in this episode, Lewis is really nice to Jacob. I'm so glad, you're doing research, but even you started the job. Like, I'm really glad you're coming aboard. I really think your experience and expertise, like Lewis is being really, really nice. Come to my office or sign the paperwork. I thought you could start next week. Is that okay with you? Like, just really, really nice. Like I said, still skeptical of him, but in this episode, he was super nice. And then, of course, you see scenes of Jacob looking up how to, how a fire could destroy a vineyard. So that kind of answers the question, like, who's it going to set fire to it, which I'm sure we're going to see. And then Elliot was talking about Kat and the fire. And that's when, Jacob basically says, Kat's going to stay. And Elliot's like, she's going to stay by herself, kind of like questioning him, like, really? And she's like, no, Susanna and Thomas are there. But I think Elliot kind of realized at that moment, like, she's strong. She's going to stay there and rebuild. I know Thomas is there. I know she's got a history with Thomas. But I think Elliot more realized, like, okay, this is a strong woman. I think I know what I have to do. Like, I need to go back, help them rebuild. Jacob's not there. I can be that, that strong hand that they need. But I felt like that was kind of his moment. Like, look, Kat is risking her life. She did it to save Jacob. She's doing it now. Like, if I want to be a part of Kat's life, I need to be a part of the traveling. I need to see what she sees, right? I need to be able to live that. And I think that's really important for them to connect. So I think that was kind of Elliot realizing, I need to go back, right? I need to be that support for Kat. This has got to be a lot. Jacob didn't stay. And then you do see the clock. Okay, yay. We see the clock. He was staring at a picture of him and Kat. The clock falls. He finds like a drawer. Now, or like a hidden door or drawer to the clock. Now, was it a long key? Was it like a metal rod? Was it a handle? Was it a crane? But at any rate, he did find something, and that could help him fix the clock. We don't really see him do anything. He actually closes his drawer. It's not like we see him work on the clock. I just think he noticed that. But his mind is elsewhere, right? So I think, in my opinion, I don't think he does anything else with the clock. But we do see the clock for once, right? Everybody talks about, what about the clock? We did see it. Hopefully we'll see it again in the future. And Jacob sees Danny, remember his childhood friend, because we know he works there too. And they had a nice interaction. I don't like the way he kind of tricked Danny for his passcode. Danny's like, yeah, we're friends. That's what friends do. I don't think Jacob understood how passwords and codes work in 2025. You can see whose code is who. So I was like, okay, I see this playing out, right? He's going to set fire to the vineyard, but he's going to use Danny's code and password, and you're going to get Danny in trouble. So to me, I'm like, that's not something you do to a good friend. So I was kind of like, oh, Jacob, you do realize this is getting back to Danny. So I didn't like that. You saw that, and of course, in the end, you see that. And then, Dell gets another unsigned note. Okay, I need to know who's sending the notes. That's one of my biggest questions I want answered. So we do see another note. This one had no stamp. And Dell even says out loud, ooh, no stamp. So, I mean, you hear her say that, no stamp at the envelope. So we still want to know who's sending the notes, but now we feel like it must be local, or somebody's dropping them off because there's no postage or stamp. And then, you see Jacob pack his bag with the matches, and you're like, okay, he's going to go set fire to the vineyard. Like, I feel like we kind of been thinking this throughout the whole episode. The preview from last week made me think, is he in 1800 setting fire to Cyrus's house then, or was he doing in 2025? So that was the question I had. We knew he was going to set fire to something, right? Because he's hot-headed and he's upset. So we do find out it's 2025 vineyard. And, keeps remembering Cyrus saying the Landry and sons sold their souls to the devil. So he's remembering that, and that's like, fueling him, so to speak, to do this. And then Elliot says he needs his help. he wants to see, he wants to see Cat, he wants to help Cat, but Jacob has to help. So we don't see the scene, but obviously Jacob takes him to the pond and jumps. Because remember, Elliot can time travel with the Landry. He time traveled once, but it was with Alice. Now he's time traveling with Jacob. So again, we don't see that scene, but I mean, there's no other way to time travel but the pond, right? The writers have kind of told us that in previous interviews. Don't quote me on that, but that's what I've been told. So I'm assuming they went to the pond and then Jacob just jumped back. And you do see Alice talk to Dell like, hey, I went back just to be a support for Evie. I tried to convince her to travel, but I don't know if she did. And Dell kind of smiles. Yeah, she did. So we get confirmation Evie leaves, when they get engaged. So that's Alice feels good, like she did a good thing. She went back to support Evie and kind of encourage her to travel and fulfill her dreams. And then you see a moment with Alice and Max where they talk about Evelyn. And we get some answers about Evelyn. He talks a little bit about Lewis. We find out that Evelyn married young. Things ended badly. She actually took back her maiden name. That's why she's still at Goodwin. She always fought the system. He even said he routinely would take my dad, Lewis, out of school to travel. Said the best education was experiencing other cultures. And then Max used a quote from Evie, and Max said, hey, my grandmother used to always say it was her against the world. And I think that took Alice back because remember in 1974, Evie says the same thing to Alice. It's me against the world now. I feel like she feels betrayed from Dell and Colton and she feels all alone. She's like, I'm left alone. It's me against the world. So this is 2025. This is 30 years later, right? And well, I guess more than that. But, this is obviously Evelyn at the end of her life, and she's telling her grandson, it's me against the world. So it's just sad to think that, she traveled, she was well traveled, she had children, she had a son. And she was really in touch with Max. They were both really good at chess, and Max just said that they complemented each other, and it was just a good grandson-grandmother relationship, but she still felt alone. She still felt at the end of her life that it was, she was alone. And she was against the world. So I just think that's sad that Alice remembers it from 1974 and 2025 or 2024. Evelyn died last year for whatever. Currently, she still says the same thing to her grandson. And then, Max opens up and gets emotional and tells him something personal, tells Alice, like, look, the day she died, she called and I didn't pick up because I couldn't handle her sickness and I didn't know what to say. And that was the night she died. And I'll always have this regret. And so Alice, being the comforting, wonderful character she is, tells, Max a quote from Evelyn, and Max just kind of has this look on his face because it's the exact same thing that his grandmother said to him on the machine. So the very last words his grandmother said the day she died to her grandson was, embrace life even when you are scared of it, because you can't follow your dreams when you are standing still. So I feel like, and then they kiss. It's like they have this connection. And then they kiss and then, they stop and Alice, oh, I got to close, because she's working. And I feel like Alice kind of looks confused. She doesn't really know what to do with this now. Like, does she really have feelings for Max, or does she feel obligated because she thinks Casey is her child? So I think there's confliction there for Alice. But I'm generally starting to like Max. I feel like there's a softer side to him. Still a little suspicious of him, but the more he opens up, I feel like we saw a very vulnerable side of him tonight, or in this episode, I should say. So maybe he doesn't know much about time traveling. Maybe he was just really close and comforting to Evelyn. So we'll find out, what else he knows later on. And then she tells her mom, I kissed Max, and they talk, and we find out that Alice has another trip to 99, which I love. I loved a young Cat and a young Elliot. I liked that in season one. I just liked seeing them as teenagers. Maybe that's just because it was the beginning of the show. I think one of the reasons why I really enjoyed season one was I loved a young Jacob. I've told you in previous videos, I have a little boy, so it just really tugged at my heartstrings, and that's what made me fall in love with the series was season one, seeing an innocent Cat, seeing an innocent Elliot, seeing little Jacob and adult Colton and Dell and them all as a family. So I love that she's going back to 99 because I feel like, we're going to see those happy times again. So they run to Elliot and, he's got it written down because he records everything. So yes, Alice does go back to 99 and you see in the previews that she does. So I'm excited for that. And then, of course, it ends with, him trying to set fire. It ends with Jacob trying to set fire to the vineyard in 2025. And Dell sees it on the computer and she rushes to stop him. And he uses Danny's code to access the fuel tank, which again, kind of bothered me. I know Jacob had an agenda. He wanted to do this, but I want to see the aftermath of that because Danny's going to get in trouble. Because we all know in modern times, which passcode belongs to which employee. So I really hope Danny doesn't have, get fired because of what he did for Jacob. Everything you do has consequences, but I feel like he wasn't doing it maliciously, you know what I mean? Danny was just trying to be a friend. He didn't really think he was going to burn down the vineyard. So again, I hope Danny doesn't get in trouble for that. But Dell shows up and yells at Jacob to stop. Let go of the past. Yells at him to get in that truck and drive. And then she says, I'm begging you. And you can just see that in her eyes. You know what I mean? Just like being a parent, just saying that to, your son or your child, like, look, just do it. You need to do it. And I feel like Jacob just, I don't know, out of frustration, wanting to listen to his mother, realizing that, he's a little out of control right now, picks up his bag and leaves. And then the last thing you see is it's all on film, right? It's being videotaped, and it's on a recording. So Jacob didn't think it was because Danny says they're coming in the next couple of days to install the cameras. So it's not like Jacob didn't know about video recording. He did. It's just Danny was saying they haven't fully put in all the cameras. So Jacob didn't think he would be on camera. So like I said, it's not like he didn't know about it. He just needed to do it now because Danny said that. So it's going to be very interesting what happens next week in the finale on what recourse or consequences he has for that. So that was the episodes, or that was basically everything that happened in the different time periods in the episodes. So what I want to go over now, because I've prepared questions and theories and answers, because I think that's the important part of these episodes is it's so much. It's so action-packed. You've got 1800s, 1970s, 2025. You've got so much going on with so many different characters that are crossing over. So it's just a lot. And we always have this list of questions on what we want answered, right? And that varies for person to person, right? Everybody you talk to about the show, if you talk to people about the show, you've probably seen in my comments, I don't have anybody to really talk at about the show. So definitely leave your comments and theories and questions in the comments and we can discuss and talk. I thoroughly enjoy that. So thank you for the people that have. And if you haven't, definitely leave some comments for me. Again, judge-free zone. We don't bash characters. I love all characters. So, no negativity. It's a very positive judge-free zone. My whole channel is that way. So what I wanted to go over, which I like to kind of keep straight and talk about, what questions and theories were answered or confirmed in this episode. And what I'm excited about is things were in each period. So I have them listed. I'm going to go over them real quick just so that we can kind of check it off our list of all of the 100 questions we have that still need answers. So in 1816, we found out what happened to Cyrus, right? We know that the book that was published showed a good side of Cyrus, right? We heard about it. Founders Day, Dell was like, look, the good ones turn things around and help the town. And of course, Jacob doesn't believe it because he's living back 200 years ago where he was tortured by this man and left to die. So he doesn't believe that Cyrus is a good person. But that's, what was written in the history books. So we find out, and that was kind of a question, or what changed? Why did he go from this evil, terrible person? And what changed to make him, be a good person and do right by the town and want to help people? And of course, we find out it's Susanna, right? First off, that is his soft spot. He stood up to the town when she said she was a witch, literally got in front of her when the town was gonna, hurt her. So he physically got in front of her, and then he went into a burning house. Granted, he's the reason they were burning the house, but still, we've seen his undying love for Susanna, right? So that is a softer side of Cyrus. However, he's still a terrible person. So that is a theory that was answered. We found out what happened to Cyrus and how Cyrus changed, but that it was really Susanna speaking for him. So even though he has a soft spot for Susanna, the reason there's any good, anything good happening with Cyrus's name on it is because of Susanna. Because remember, that's part of the agreement. You can't walk, you can't talk. I will heal you with my, my potions and, my healing, my herbs. I will heal you, but I will speak for you. I will run Port Haven as I see fit. And he agreed. So all of the good deeds that Cyrus did from then on out, 1816 and beyond, were all Susanna, right? And we know Susanna lived a long life. So that kind of answers that question. What changed? Why did he become good? Well, Susanna is the reason he was good, because she did it. We also found out Susanna purposely left out the chapter about Cyrus being mean, and she admitted to writing the book. So we found out Susanna really did write the book, which we kind of assumed from Kat, but this was out of Susanna's mouth, so again, 100% confirmed. Susanna wrote the book. She confirmed she's the one who left the chapter out. So that's confirmed, because we all thought, well, who took the chapter out? Was it Lewis? Was it, somebody in the Goodwin family so that Cyrus looked good? So we found out she's the one who left it out, because she didn't want to tarnish all the good that she's doing in Cyrus's name. So that's something we had answered. We kind of got closure on the end of the Kat and Thomas relationship, that bittersweet moment. Yet I feel like they've closed the book on that. I've kind of said that in past episodes. At the beginning of the season, I'm like, okay, well, he can't travel to the future, so I guess that's over. But she keeps going back, and they keep, having this Kat and Thomas relationship, keep coming back to it, and it's still happening, right? So I feel like they really did close the book. At least the writers did it in a very respectful way. That I hope me as a fan and the rest of us as fans really respect the writers for doing it so nice, nicely done, very bittersweet. Again, I wish they did some kind of embrace, but I digress. It was still very well done, in my opinion. They had their final conversation, and then you see Thomas in the woods, and he kind of leaves forever. Then he does that nod with Elliot, and then he does kind of leave. And you get that confirmation again on the rules. You will never be able to travel forward. So, what's next for you? So Kat is shutting the book on Thomas. Like, look, we're never going to be together. You need to move on with your life. And then we also get a confirmation that he has family in New York, because I feel like we kind of questioned that with Jasper. When Jasper said his ancestors were in New York, like, was that because he had to leave and he was the first one to get to New York, so the ancestors had to be Thomas and his kids, and grandkids? Or was it somebody else? And we find out here he already had family in New York. So that does answer one of those questions. So yes, he goes to New York, or we think he's going to New York, but there was family already there. And then there was also some answers in 1974 that we got a resolution on. We found out what happened with Colton singing. So I feel like that was kind of hanging over our heads too. I mean, we saw them record a record, a demo record, and it got sent to a big time producer. So I'm always like, what happened with Colton's career? Because even in season 1 and season 2, you see Colton with his guitar. He sings with Alice. You see him sing with Dell, with Jacob and Kat. Growing up in 1999. So, I mean, Colton loves to sing. So, at some point that opportunity had to have come and gone. And we figured it was around Dell, but we really didn't know. People were speculating Dell was pregnant. Maybe they got pregnant, or maybe he had to stay for some other reason. So I like that they kind of confirmed that, yes, Colton was going to go to San Francisco to record a record in person and, hopefully have a music career. So, and then we saw Dell come back, because then we're wondering, when does Dell come back? We know she does. What happens? Then we see Dell come back, we see him propose, and then we see the whole conversation. We kind of see why Evie and Dell kind of have bad blood, right? Because Evie was going to go to San Francisco. She's really big on dreams. This is Colton's dream. So she's kind of, bitter towards Dell, thinking you're the reason Colton's not going to fulfill his dream of singing. It's because of you. So she kind of was a little upset about Dell, but she was also a little upset about Colton, because remember, she's still in love with Colton. She's realizing that's never going to happen. So, and even in that scene, Colton was like, don't leave. You're my best. And Evie finishes the sentence, friend, I know. So like, she's coming to the realization, like, I know, that's all I am to you. So I feel like, that kind of, confirms that she feels kind of betrayed by Colton and Dell, kind of like a sad, betrayal, but sad, kind of like a realization, like, okay, this is not happening, and I'm not just losing Cole, I'm losing her to Dell. They're going to stay here. And you kind of find out why, in a way, still could be more to the story, but you find out why Dell feels she's entitled and owes the Goodwins. Evelyn, owes Evelyn, not necessarily the Goodwins, but Evelyn per se. Well, I guess the Goodwins, because she kind of wants Jacob to go, and I feel like maybe that's her still feeling like she owes them. But since Evie asked her parents and Dell could stay at the Lingermore till they get married, and then she says, to Dell, well, you owe me one, Delilah. So we kind of find out Dell owes Evelyn, you know what I mean? So we kind of get that question answered. What does she owe him for? Because we did always feel that way, right? I'm sure you felt that way too. Like Dell felt like she owed Evelyn and the Goodwins something, but we didn't know what it was because of. So that's kind of what we found out. And we also found out that Evie doesn't return, right? We know Evie travels, but what happened in 1974? What changed her? This is what changed her. She was going to go be a groupie. She was going to live with Colton, have this big singing career. She was going to kind of have this new life in San Francisco. And with the blink of an eye, in one afternoon, Dell comes, they're engaged, they're getting married. Now all of a sudden, Colton doesn't want to go. So like, it kind of changes Evie altogether. That's when she's crying to Alice, like, I'm all alone. So we find out what happens. Well, what happened after they got engaged? Did she stick around? No. You can stay at Lingermore. My family, my parents said you can stay as long as you want. And then you realize she's not going to be there. She's traveling. She's gone. She's going to go experience the world. So that kind of answers the question too. We find out what happened to Evie, what she does after they, get married and get engaged. She leaves. We also find out about Colton's time travel. Like I mentioned earlier, we find out the whole story. So I'm really glad about that, because we find out like bookends of him traveling. We know when he went, when Alice saw him, everything. And then we answer the Fern question. Another thing that was answered, we answered the Fern quote. He broke the rules. What did he break the rules? Like everybody's been, what was the rules? What did he break? Did he forward time travel? Did he stay in time? What was the rules? Was it the potatoes and rye? But that seemed kind of like, could that really have been breaking the rules? Yes, it was confirmed. You will see Fern for 2 seconds when she says you broke the rules because you told them about potatoes and rye. That was their future. So we found out what the rule breaker and what Fern meant by that. And again, I love Fern, so everything she says means something. And we found out, an answer to that. So that was great. We had that answer. And then Dell's secret, right? We kind of find out it's about the financial situation. So we kind of find out, when she returns, that's why she returns to be with Colton. So we do find out about Dell's secret. And we also find out about Dell's horse Lightning. So I mentioned that because we kind of questioned that in season 1 and 2. What's the story with this horse? She mentioned that, she lost her horse and we now know what happened to it, right? So that kind of solves a small mystery, but still it kind of goes with the Dell secret. So there were a couple questions answered in 2025 as well. We find out some answers from Max about an adult Evelyn, which is exciting too. A lot of people were questioning like the last name. And I mentioned that, I think I mentioned that in comments that she must have kept her maiden name. But back then in 1974, it wasn't that common. But again, we're talking about Evelyn. She fights the system. She does it her own way. But we did get confirmation that she married young and it ended badly. So that's how she had Lewis. So that confirms it. Lewis is really Evelyn's child. She got married young, had Lewis, ended badly. She took her name back and she traveled with their son. And then connected really well with Max, her grandson. So it does answer some questions, about why she's still a Goodwin. Did she ever marry? Did she have any other children? What was her ex-husband? So that is what we find out. We also find out a given there with Jacob and the fire. Like I said, the previews last week just showed him wearing black. So we really didn't know. I mean, he could have been going back to 1816 and burning down Cyrus's house then. We don't know. But we got confirmation he wanted to burn down the vineyards, at Lewis, at Lingermore and, the vineyards there. And we got confirmation of that because we saw that at the end of the episode. And of course, it was all caught on tape. So, there was a lot of things that we got answered in all 3 time periods. So I kind of wanted to run them down because it's hard when you watch it. When you watch these episodes, you're like, wait, okay, yes, we got that answer. So I wanted to kind of put it all together because even if it's not an answer we wanted to know, it's still nice to come full circle, right? Especially the time traveling. We kind of assumed since he was wearing the suit when he saved Jacob from the burning house, it kind of looked like a suit you would wear to a funeral, but we were just assuming. We didn't know how many times he time traveled. So I think the thing that I enjoyed most was kind of having that bookend, having the closure with the Cat and Thomas. I like all characters, right? We don't bash people on my videos or my comments. It's a judge-free zone. I like Elliot. I like Thomas. I loved the Thomas character, and I really loved how they ended their relationship. I just felt like it needed to happen. As much as I love Thomas, you got to get real. I know this is a show and it's fantasy and not real life, but in the show, you have to get real with your characters. And there was no way for them to be together unless he time traveled to the future, which, yes, is always a possibility because we're always skeptical and we're always hopeful. So, yes, I myself was like, hey, maybe Thomas can time travel and get together with Kat. So, yes, I thought that too. Even after he attempted to jump in the pond and didn't go anywhere, I still thought maybe with the Landry. But no, Kat shuts that down. The writers made it a point for Kat to say that, to kind of tell us, the fans, look, it's not going to happen. We tried to be nice about this. We're closing it in a nice package for you. Thomas and Kat are over. I know a lot of people don't want to hear that because a lot of people loved that relationship. And like I said, I liked it too, but you have to be realistic. It's not going to go any further. That being said, it was beautifully done. I loved that. So we did get a lot of answers there. Now what I want to go over is what questions we still need answers to. So the clock, we did see the clock, so I'm glad we saw it, but we didn't really get any answers with just a little bit more questions. We saw the clock, we saw the drawer. Is that a crane? Is it a handle? Is it a key? What does that, metal rod do to the clock? Is he going to fix it? A lot of people think that if they ever fix a clock, it's going to forward, travel. Maybe somebody's caught in time. I don't know. I think those are all wonderful theories. I don't say yes and no on theories because I don't know myself. I just know from what they project as, you can only time travel backwards. But you never know what could happen on this show. So I definitely want to see what's going on with the clock. Maybe it's a red herring. Remember, not everything has to be significant. Some things are fluff. Some things are just fillers. Some things don't matter. I know we like to analyze every detail. I do too. I love mysteries. I like to analyze everything and think of what they said, what they looked like, everything. I know people are analyzing clothes on certain scenes of individuals. So, but not everything is meant to be analyzed. So the hard part is, though, how do we know what to analyze and what not to analyze? So I don't judge or criticize anybody because I think it's just fun because we really don't know. So the clock might not mean anything and they're just stringing us along, but I still want to know more. Dell's unsigned notes. Okay, so if you've seen my videos, this is like number one on my list. I want to know who sent her the notes, especially today. We got a letter with no stamp on it at all. So who's sending them, and why hasn't she told Kat and Jacob? She really needs to tell them. They might have their own theories on who's sending them, but I desperately want to know. That's on the top of my list. That's like one of my one or two things I really still want to know. Who's sending the letters, and why does this one now not have a stamp? Does that mean this is more personal? We saw in the previews for last week, for this week's episode, we saw an actual one of the notes, and it said, keep an eye on your son. Keep your eye on your son, exclamation point, quote unquote. But we didn't actually see her, look at the letter. So that was a little teaser. They teased that they might show that this episode, and they didn't show it at all. They just showed, an envelope with no stamp on it. So I'm still going to write that down because I have all the notes and what they say on a separate piece of paper. So we kind of know she got that note, but we really don't know when because they didn't show her opening it and actually seeing it. So hopefully we'll see that in the future. I really want her to tell Kat and Jacob. Who is Casey? Who is she related to? We didn't see Casey at all. However, we did get a preview of her for next week. And then who is Sam? And what is his relationship with Casey? So is he really just a family lawyer? Is Casey is a time traveler? We know, we saw her jump in the pond. Is Sam a time traveler, or is Sam kind of like Elliot to Alice? Is Sam, not a time traveler but knows Casey is and kind of helps her get dry clothes and, helps her when she travels? Because remember, Alice, when she travels in season 1, that's what Elliot did. Elliot knew, and he would provide clothes and help her in the time period that she went to. So we don't know. I mean, I really am still skeptical of Sam. We haven't seen him. So that's something we still need answered. Who is the baby in the basket? Who are the jumpers? We still need that answered. What does Lewis know? Today, or I say in this episode, episode 9, Lewis was really nice to Jacob, but I'm still skeptical. I'm skeptical of everybody, basically. Maybe not Max. I was skeptical of Max, and now seeing his vulnerable side, I don't really think he knows very much. Or maybe he knows stuff about Evelyn that he doesn't know he knows, right? But I think Lewis is more skeptical. And we didn't see anything about the chess piece and the burner phone in the attic. We assume that Casey used the burner phone, but it could be somebody else. We don't know. Remember, with this show, everything that we assume is probably wrong. You just don't know. Like I said on this show, you just really don't know. And then what we did not see at all in this episode. We saw no Sam, no Casey, except in the preview, no Rita, no Noah. We don't know if Noah's gone for good or what's going on, if he's going to come back in the picture. No Brady, no Emma, no Nick. Nick was so big in last episode, comforting everybody. He wasn't in it at all. We still don't know, who's sending Delza notes. So we didn't actually see any notes. We just saw it in the preview, keep your eye on your son. But we didn't see a new note, just an envelope with no stamp on it. There's a lot of things that we didn't see. Now the previews for next week, let me just go over that real quick and then we'll see what our options are for the cliffhanger. So for next week, I have questions that I want answered. Maybe you do too. Like I say, leave them in the comments. We can have a discussion. What we're going to see next week, they actually say all our questions will be answered. So I feel like everybody says that in a season finale because everybody has different questions, right? Everybody has something they really want to know. A lot of people are dying to find out who Casey is. People are dying to find out what Sam has to do with anything. I personally really want to know about the unsigned notes. We found out about Del's secret. But is there something more that has to do with the unsigned notes? But anyways, so let me just go back to the preview. They said all our questions will be answered, but we'll see. So they showed Thomas and Kat. They showed Elliot and Kat. They showed a young Kat back in 99 with Colton quoting, Alice is unique, quote unquote, to a young Kat. So that's interesting because I loved the 99 scenes. You see Jacob ask Casey, who are you? So Jacob actually confronts Casey, says, who are you? And Casey is smiling. So I like that. It doesn't look like she turns around and runs. She's smiling as if she wants to tell people who she is. So I'm really hoping that means we do get an answer on Casey. But then, these scenes are cut and it's deceiving, but that's what it shows in the preview. We see a young Jacob with Colton, Del saying, take me to see him. And she's with Kat and Alice. So I'm assuming she's meaning Colt. We don't know. Maybe she's meaning Jacob because like I said, they split all of these clips up and you never really know. And then you see Cole in Lingermore and he recognizes Kat from the My Cat portrait. So that's interesting on why he's there as an adult and recognizes her. So what cliffhanger is going to be in episode 10? So you've probably seen me say it in the comments because I think some people have asked at the last couple episodes. I think, and again, judge-free zone, this is just my opinion. I think with the whole baby and the jumpers, the baby in the basket, my opinion is next week in the cliffhanger in episode 10, we are going to see the faces of the jumpers. We are not going to know who the baby is. We are not going to know which time period they jump to because keep in mind, they're leaving a baby in one time period and they're jumping to another. So we don't know what time period they're in that the baby in the basket is in. And we don't know what time period they're jumping to. So, and then we don't know what was in the note. And we don't know who the baby is. So to me, I think they're going to give us an answer next week, but it's going to leave us with 10 more questions. I don't think we're going to find out everything. I think we're going to have all summer and all fall, kind of speculating all of these answers. So it would be wonderful if they show us who the jumpers are and you actually see a scene of them talking, or you actually read the note, or we can pause it and read the note, or we hear them have a discussion, or you see them jump and you see Evelyn, or you see somebody coming up and grabbing the baby in the basket. So, they're not just sitting next to a pond. But I don't think we will. So I could be wrong. I could be 100% wrong. So again, don't quote me on this. This is just 100% my opinion. I think we will get an answer on the baby in the basket and the jumpers, but I don't think it's going to be everything we want to know. Because remember, there's a lot of things we want to know, not just who the baby is, but why was it left at the pond? Who were the jumpers? Where did they jump to? What period was the baby left in? What did the note say? And who picked up the baby? So, that's a lot of questions. So I really think they're just going to give us one or two answers. And in my opinion, we're not even going to hear dialogue. We are literally going to see in the last like 2 minutes of the episode 10 for, the end of the season, we're going to see the faces. We're going to see them look at each other, hold their hand, and jump. I hope not. I want more answers, but I just feel like that is a cliffhanger that they're going to tell us about in season 4. Now, you've seen in my earlier videos, early in season 3, 4 or 5 episodes ago, you heard me say, I don't think we're going to find out about Casey till season 4. So I am definitely happy if we do find out who Casey is, even though we see the quote of Jacob saying, "Who are you?" And she's smiling like Casey wants to tell us. That could be deceiving too. My first thought was we're not going to hear about Casey till season 4. This season 3 was supposed to be about the 70s and looking back on Del and Colton. We've noticed that this season has really been heavy on the 1800s. Not that I'm complaining, but it seems like season 1 was 99, meeting a young cat, and Brady, and seeing how Alice, came about, seeing her parents. And then in season 2, we really saw the 1800s trying to bring Jacob back. And here we are in season 3, supposed to be out the 70s and seeing Alice, seeing her grandparents, Del and Colton's history. But we saw a lot of the 1800s too. I like that because the 1800s brought more of the Augustine. Because remember in 74, you don't see much of the Augustines. Once Rick dies, Vic hates the family and you don't hear anything. So I like seeing Susanna and seeing more about the, founding families. You see the Goodwins, the Augustines, and the Landrys. So that's one of the reasons why I really enjoy the 1800s. But yeah, this season was very jumbled. So I might still be correct. We might not really find out about Casey until the next season. We'll just have to wait and see. And Sam, we didn't see Sam in the last couple episodes. Are we going to get a cliffhanger on who Sam is? Because people have said in an interview that Sam says he was in episode 10. So he hasn't been in the last couple. So if the actor himself says he's in episode 10, what happens with Sam, right? Because I'm still skeptical of him. And Del's unsigned notes. Please, I think that's still going to be a cliffhanger because yes, thank you for telling us Del's secret. I thought it had to do with her family and a financial situation, and I was right, it did. But I still think there's secret that Del is keeping from us that has to do with the unsigned notes. It's like she's scared when she gets them, but it's like she's not surprised. It's like she knows she has this secret and, somebody else knows about it. So I still think Del is keeping a secret and it's involving those unsigned notes. I do not think it's as easy as they know Jacob's a time traveler. No, I think it's something deeper because it scares her. However, one thing that I do want to mention is remember when Del yelled at Alice on her birthday party episode a couple episodes ago, and she was saying, she was telling Sam, I don't want people to think bad of me. She said she came back and she left people with no choice at all. I don't have the exact quote, so I apologize. But what did she mean by that? She left people with no choice at all. Was she talking about Evie? Evie had no choice because she didn't want to be around them, so she traveled, or her family had no choice. What was that mean? What choice does she take away from somebody else? Was she saying she took the choice away from Colton getting a record deal? Even though she didn't, Del said, Colton, I'll travel with you to San Francisco. I'm not going to make you stay because of me. But what did she mean by that quote at her birthday party? I gave somebody no choice at all. Like I said, so many different ways to interpret that. Does that have to do with Evie? Does it have to do with Colton? Does it have to do with her family? So again, I still think we have not uncovered all of Del's secrets. One of them that she still hasn't told us is about the notes. So a lot to ponder, a lot to think about. I hope you enjoyed my review, my discussion. Again, those are just my comments. I love all characters. So please, just positive questions, concerns, discussions. I hope you enjoyed it. I look forward to speaking with you. So yeah, leave me questions and comments, and I will see you next week for the finale. Bye-bye.